and we'll go ahead and get started. And people will come on when they come on in.
And I'll replace the current share. That should be it. Great.
Perfect. Yes, you're good.
Okay.
Thank you for doing that. All right.
Yep. Let's get this started.
Let's get this party started. All right. Welcome everyone to the August I-29 Moo University and the Northern Plains Forage Association Forage webinar series. We're continuing with a variety of forage topics, including an overview of how tar spot affects corn silage, getting forage cutters ready for the field, plus a review of USDA programs for forage growers. This webinar series is an extension of the annual Forage Field Day sponsored each summer and rotated among Iowa, Minnesota, Nebraska, and South Dakota. This webinar will be archived on the I-29 Moo University website at i-29moou.com/forages. The Forage webinar newsletter will be sent via email once the webinar is posted to the website. It will contain the link for this evening's program, the announcement and registration link for next month's webinar, and the link for the webinar evaluation. We encourage you to take 2 minutes to give us your thoughts on how to use this useful webinar series, on how useful this webinar series is to you, and how we can improve it, plus topics for the future. Please go ahead. If you have questions, enter them in the chat box. We'll discussion after all three presenters have had a chance to start or to present. Our first presentation tonight is Dr. Harkirat Kaur, an assistant professor and extension specialist in corn production systems at UW-Madison, who will be discussing tar spot in corn. Tar spot is an emerging foliar disease in the Midwest, resulting in devastating yield and nutritive value losses. Her team's research focuses on quantifying these losses and exploring management options. Results show that increased tar spot severity caused up to 27% dry yield loss in silage corn. Silage corn affected by tar spot also has lower NDF digestibility and predicted milk yield. Dr. Kaur's research focuses on promoting economically and environmentally sustainable corn production while preserving ecological integrity. She aims to address agronomic concerns such as weather challenges, the resurgence of secondary pests, and the invasion of non-native species. And with that, Dr. Kaur, the floor is yours.
Sure. Thank you so much, Gail. And it's a beautiful evening, and I hope everybody's enjoying their time and also kind of, getting ready for their silage harvest. I mean, I know with Wisconsin, we produce almost a lot more silage than what it is in Iowa, but it's always an exciting time of the year. And when things started, getting closer to the end of the growing season, then we start seeing the fruits of our hard work throughout the season. So today, for this conversation or this discussion, we'll be talking about tar spot and how it impacts silage corn yield and overall quality in terms of its nutritive value. So this is a research project that I did with my colleagues at Michigan, and the data that I'll be presenting today will be from the study that we did in Michigan. Before we get into what the trial was and what we observed, I would just like to give an overview of what tar spot is. And although I have it here saying that it's a major new disease in the Great Lakes region and Midwest, it's not as new now. I mean, it's technically a decade of tar spot since it was first identified, and for Wisconsin and Iowa and actually Michigan as well, it's closer to a decade, not a decade, because for us, we found it the first time in 2016. Across the last decade, there has been two major outbreak years, with 2018 and 2021 being the highlight of that. And in both these years, the yield losses that we incurred from tar spot ranged anywhere between 30 to 50%. And mind you, these are actually the gray numbers, and I would get in a bit why are these gray numbers and why we don't have silage numbers as of yet. So that's an interesting caveat to the overall data that we are getting at this point from many resources. And then there was a very interesting thing that happened in 2024. Although we did not have as high severities, or we didn't see as high severities of tar spot in 2024 as we saw in 2018 and 2021. We did have one of the major impact years with respect to yield numbers in terms of corn grain. These are the numbers from USDA and Crop Protection Network. So, if we look at these numbers, and they are a very large scale impact values, so they also have an effect in terms of economic terms. So when we look at that, and if we start deriving it from the field level losses, I'd like to think of it in a way that, across all these years, say from 2018 to 2024, the corn prices have ranged anywhere between 361 to 459. And if we consider the range of loss that we just saw in the previous slide, that is 30 to 50%, we see that for an acre, we are losing anywhere between 85 to 275 dollars of money, if that's the range of yield loss that we're looking at. And similarly, as I highlighted the year 2024, we did see a loss of about 1.23 to 1.3 million dollars in terms of corn production in the northern US states. Although it says northern, it constitutes the Midwest and the parts of the Northeast as well. It eliminates any corn in the South Belt. Now, if I want to look at it from silage perspective, there are different ways of doing it. And one way that I like to look at it is to have an overview, like an eagle view of how the silage production looks like. So the silage production numbers from last year for the entire United States was around 130 million tons. And if we look at it from perspective of economics, and we see that corn silage custom rate and feed value was, anywhere between 40 to 55 tons as fed. And if we convert it from the equivalence losses that we were getting in terms of 280 million bushels, so if we go by the logic that one bushel of grain roughly translates into 7 to 8 pounds of silage at 35% dry matter, we are looking at a loss incurred in terms of 46 to 50 million dollars. But just let me stop right here and give a word of caution. This is not actually how it is done, because this assumes that what would have happened if all the grain that we lost was somehow intended for silage. That's not how it happens. And that's where the lapse is. We do not actually have these numbers for silage. And the reason behind that is a lot of silage is on farm fed, on farm used, and that kind of affects the overall estimation numbers with respect to tar spot or other diseases. Secondly, for silage, it is hard to estimate the direct impact of tar spot, because many times during the last 10 years, there have been years where tar spot appeared late. So the direct impact or the overall impact of the disease in terms of yield might not have been that visible. And that would have eventually made its way, although into quality or nutritive value, but it's hard to overall put it out as a number. So that was one of the motivations behind doing this research, as we were looking at these numbers and we were not getting the answers that we wanted to see. So as corn researchers or agronomy researchers, we started off by getting an overall understanding of what tar spot was. And it is, as literature says, caused by this fungi called Phyllochora maydis, and it is a native of Central and Latin Americas. And over there, it's caused by the complex of two fungi. We over here in the United States have only isolated one of the two. In terms of the symptoms, it looks like small raised black circular lesions on corn leaf. And how can you visualize it is like if you have a paintbrush and then you dip it in a bowl of tar and then you kind of splash it on the wall. The kind of spots that you get on the wall, that's literally what you see on a leaf of corn. Furthermore, when the disease progresses, it results in premature leaf senescence, it results in drying out of the plant and eventually resulting in reduced ear size, poor kernel fill, vivipary, and also lodging in plants. Now, how these symptoms translate into silage corn health is that when we look at spots affecting the overall area on the corn leaf, they're basically covering the green surface area of the leaf, which is actually photosynthetically active region, which means it's overall affecting the production of starch, production of carbohydrate for the plant, and hence affecting our yield tonnage. Furthermore, as we saw in the previous slide, that due to its symptoms and its working in the plant when it has favorable conditions, it's the quick senescence and drying that's very visible in the field. This results in a quick loss of moisture, which would obviously impact our packaging densities, which would impact the fermentation health of the silage and eventually have an impact on what we are getting at the feed out. Furthermore, it also reduces the stalk strength, which means that is there an increased ash content? Is there an increased fiber content? Those are some of the questions which are unanswered and which are the answers that we wanted to look into when we were doing this research. And then eventually, is all this resulting in an overall reduction in milk per ton? Because no matter how much silage you have, if you don't have good enough milk per ton production from there, your cows are not going to eat it. So when we look at a good quality corn silage, we try to look across these 4 different parameters. And for all these parameters, start with biomass yield. We need to have good yields at adequate moisture to have a good quality eventually, have a optimum digestibility, have a nutritional composition that overall has a positive impact on our milk per ton. So if we try to compare the qualitative and quantitative aspects over here, for example, I have dry yield on the y-axis and milk per ton, which is the qualitative parameter, on the x-axis. So technically, we want our silage to be in the 4th upper quadrant, which is the high tonnage, high quality silage. But with the invasion or with the infection from tar spot pathogens, what we see is that we don't even get to the high tonnage, low quality or low tonnage, high quality quadrants because the plant kind of succumbs to the infection so quickly that we end up somewhere in this sad little corner, which is something we don't want. So that's why with help of forage specialists at Michigan State, cropping systems agronomist at Michigan State, we kind of conducted this research trial where we had 2 primary objectives. The first one was to quantify the decline in yield and forage nutritive value due to tar spot. So, going back to the same lack of data that we were kind of looking at, the kind of numbers that we were not able to get, we were like, let's go in the field and find them for our own self. And the second part of the question that we wanted to address was also explore what are the management options out there already available and how can we effectively use them in our fields. So in order to do that, we conducted research trials across 3 different locations in Michigan. Our design was a randomized complete design with 4 replications, and we specifically had two treatments, where we had one treatment which was a hybrid type, and we had hybrids which were either susceptible or partially resistant. We got these categories from the disease ratings provided by the seed companies in their catalogs. The second treatment was fungicide application, and so both of these treatments were serving in a way to allow us have diverse range of disease severity across the field, and also to test what management options did we have around. In respect with the data collection that we wanted to do, we were obviously very concerned and keen on tracking the tar spot severity right from when it started towards towards the end, when we were harvesting our silage. And then obviously we were interested in looking at the yield and nutritive value numbers at the final harvest. And we tried to maintain our moisture numbers somewhere between 60 to 68% when we were harvesting that. So overall, our results show that there was not a very direct relationship between tar spot severity and dry yield losses, and that could come from the fact that we did not have very high enough tar spot severity. I mean, you can see here on the screen that the highest tar spot severity we observed was at branch 2021, and it was in a susceptible hybrid, and it was closer to 30%. So we did not have this tar spot severity as high as say 50% or more, where the plant is under complete shutdown. So maybe that's why the relationships over here are not as linear as we would have liked it to be. But we obviously did see that there was an overall impact on yields if we were looking at partially resistant hybrids or susceptible hybrids across the site years. But we wanted to look at it from a different approach, and for that, what we did was at the site where we had the highest disease, we separated our plots into three different categories: the plots with 1 to 5% of disease severity, the plots with 6 to 10%, and the plots with mean severity of 11 to 20%. And we did see that with an increased disease severity, we were having a yield which was about 27% less than what it was in the plots where we had minimum to no disease occurrence. Similar reductions and similar patterns were observed when we looked at the yield and nutritive value at a glance. And over here, I'm just highlighting what we saw in the figures in the previous slide in terms of numbers here. So you can see here that, the partially resistant hybrids, because they had a lower, because they had the tar spot severity, which was lower than their counterparts, we did see lesser yield decline as opposed to what we saw in susceptible hybrids. For the NDF, we did see an increase in the fiber content as opposed to what we were seeing in partially resistant hybrids. We also saw some patterns with respect to digestibility in terms of the dry matter digestibility as well as the digestibility of NDF, where we saw that about 2 to 5% loss in digestibility was observed in susceptible hybrids, and that was primarily coming from the disease that we were seeing in those hybrids. For predicted milk yields, we did see about 2 to 5% loss for milk per ton. For milk per acre, the losses were as high as 20% as well. As we also wanted to look at the starch and protein accumulation, we saw that we had we saw a very different pattern over here. Interestingly, the susceptible hybrids had a higher starch accumulation, and even the similar case was with the crude protein. So that made us think that was all the differences that we were seeing in our nutritive quality coming directly from the function of disease severity, or was there a role, inherent role of hybrid that was affecting these numbers? So I would say, unfortunately, we do not have a clear answer to that question, and in order to resolve those ambiguities, we have been planning and aiming to conduct a research trial in future, where we have multiple, more than two hybrids per category, so that we can actually pinpoint that all those reductions or all those benefits that we are seeing are the function of the differences in the disease severity. So at this, because at this point, this is something of ambiguity. But as we were looking at this trial and we had our different treatments in a way where we could, we could have plants with 0% tar spot severity to anywhere between 25 to 28% tar spot severity. We wanted to see how are they playing in terms of controlling the overall tar spot spread or development in the field. So we kind of switched our angles and started looking at it from the point of view of management options. We did see that when we were that irrespective of the hybrids, when we had two applications of a fungicide, Delro in this case, we saw a decline in tar spot severity, and as opposed to when we were having no fungicide applications, or when we did not, or when we applied just one. But the interesting part to see is that even in 1 to 2 applications, we were not seeing any statistical differences. That could primarily be because in most of these cases, the disease appeared later in the season. So we started scouting fields right somewhere between V11 to V13, but in most of the cases, we did not see any disease symptoms in the field until, say, R2 or so. So that kind of brings the question of return on investment that we talk about while making any fungicide decisions. That is it worth doing a second application? It depends very much on what you are seeing in the field, how much disease severity you are seeing in the field, and what growth stage is your crop at. In terms of the hybrid responses, we did see, that partially resistant hybrids had about 50% less tar spot severity than what we were seeing in the susceptible hybrids. So this is something which is promising going forward with respect to germplasm selections, and we will be looking forward to partner with the industry counterparts in order to screen more hybrids for tar spot resistance and provide farmers with better answers on what hybrids they can invest in. So at this point, partially resistant hybrids available in the market are some things that can help you overall evade the disease pressure going to very high levels. So with this, I would just like to highlight what the conditions are looking like in 2025. So this is the tar spot map from Crop Protection Network, and all these yellow counties are the ones where we have already seen tar spot symptoms, confirmed tar spot symptoms. And we have been seeing some pockets of tar spot where the disease is progressing fast. But again, the application for fungicide is very much determinant on what growth stage your crop is at. If you're already somewhere at R4 or so, and you want to harvest the crop for silage, number one, it might not be a very ROI positive decision for you. Or secondly, it could also not, it could also actually jeopardize your harvest plans, because then your pre-harvest interval for the fungicide may not be satisfied before it is already time to harvest with respect to the moisture levels that you're seeing in the field. With that, there are some other foliar issues that we did see in 2025. Number one being gray leaf spot. We started the season with, we were seeing some of the gray leaf spot in the early parts of July and so, but we didn't see it to a full-blown extent at this point. We are actually experiencing a lot of southern corn rust. I mean, last year it was something which was more of a novelty for at least for Wisconsin, because that's where people were, quite surprised to see southern corn rust over here, because it's not that common because we don't have because we have like harsh winters and the pathogen does not overwinter that well. But for last 2 consecutive years we have been seeing a lot more of it, and it will be very interesting to see how things move ahead. And we have seen some incidences of northern corn leaf blight, nothing too worrisome, but yeah, it's something that is, here and there, but in a very limited amount, not affecting the overall plant health and yield. So with that, I would like to summarize the overall observations from our research and what we are being seeing in 2025. So obviously in last 10 years, it has been proven that tar spot is a consistent silage risk. There are some years when it is, going crazy and we see high levels of yield losses. But there are some other years where we don't, and we tend to see maybe it was just, there for a bit and then went away. But for last 10 years, it has not gotten away. So it requires more attention, and it obviously steals our yield. It impacts our yield in a way that we experience monetary losses. We also experience quality losses, and they're as much important to us as tonnage, because that's what decides the palatability of silage corn for the livestock. It is bound to lower our starch and digestibility values, and which would ultimately increase our ration costs and impact our overall milk production potential. For managing tar spot at this point, what our research showed that hybrid selection and fungicide application are critical. However, those decisions are some things which need to be accompanied by scouting. There has to be a level of scouting that we need to, invest in and see what the crop growth is, what the crop growth stage is, what the disease levels are. Is it, is it ROI friendly to spray? And the third point is, if we are seeing the increase of, tar spot in your field and your crop is already nearing to maturity for silage, it is always it is smarter to harvest sooner than later. So with that, I would like to plug in our Badger Crop Network. So this is a QR code over here. So we over here at UW Madison, we are 4 state specialists, myself, so the soybean agronomist, Dr. Sean Conley, and the pest management guys, Dr. Damon Smith and Dr. Rodrigo Verley. This website, we provide seasonal updates, very recent updates, and there are many tools that you can access through this website which can help you make harvest decisions and ROI uh, uh, ROI evaluations as well. We'll be coming with hybrid trials in 2025 with the data of 2025 the weekend before Thanksgiving. So stay tuned for that as well. And with that, I would like to thank all the amazing people who helped me do this research. And I can't take any questions at this point, but I will be, here for the later question answer session as well. So I hope I'm on time, Gail. Thank you.
You are on perfect time. I could not have timed that better myself. Thank you very much for that presentation. Shane, we'll have you go ahead and pull up your slides while we transition. Again, if you've joined us, go ahead. If you have questions for the speakers, put them in the chat. We're going to do questions with all three speakers once we get to the end of the webinar. But as Shane pulls his slides up, I'll go ahead and give a little bit of background. Shane Campbell is the John Deere SPFH and Heads product manager. He is going to give a quick crop flow overview, looking at corn head optimization, cutting component options, maintenance and optimization, kernel processor options, maintenance and processing performance, feed quality, cut quality, processing quality, and packaging, harvest lab utilization, and plus give a new F8 and F9 machine overview. Shane grew up on a small farm in southern Iowa, where he still resides today with his family. He started working contractually with John Deere while attending college at Iowa State University in the Ag Systems Technology program and continued working for them after graduation. In 2006, he joined John Deere full-time with the customer support team at John Deere Ottumwa. He supported all hay and forage equipment built in Ottumwa, Iowa, and I should have asked how to pronounce the name of the city over in Germany. Zweibrücken?
Zweibrücken. Yep.
Okay. Shane has been with John Deere for over 19 years with varying responsibility in service and marketing, covering all regions across North America, agriculture related to hay and forest harvesting. Currently, he's responsible for the John Deere SPFH and Heads business for North America. This includes being the voice of the customer and bringing machine functionality, technology, and reliability to the customer to help them grow their business. So with that, Shane, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Gail. Appreciate that. I would also like to say thanks for the last presentation on corn diseases. We are seeing some of that stuff in southern Iowa here as well. So hopefully it doesn't hurt our crops too much, and we can get good yields again this year. But I'm going to talk a little bit about forage harvesters. Fred asked me to talk more about getting ready for harvest. So I'm going to go through some of the items that we need to look at in preparation for corn silage, as well as some issues you might encounter through the year, and kind of help navigate through some of those. This machine here that is on my first screen, this is our new F9 1000 machine. We just released it the first part of June. I'll have a little bit of information on that, but isn't it a pretty looking machine? So I'll start kind of going through here. I wanted to bring attention, I guess, to this YouTube video that's out there. If you're not familiar how a forage harvester works, this 9000 series animation crop flow overview on YouTube, it gives a really good overview of how things work, the terminology, and what each of the components in the machine do. So if you're confused with stuff after this conference, please take a look at this YouTube video. It is a very nice overview of how things work. I won't spend time on that today, but it is available. So to give kind of a real quick update or lineup for what we offer today for machines, we have machines from 431 PS, which PS is metric horsepower. And then it's real close to the US horsepower, but that's kind of PS is kind of what everybody goes by anymore. So we're 431 PS in our 8100 up to 970 PS with the 9900. We're offering 4 different engines with model year 25. And the JD18X has been a very popular engine for us. So that one, I'll have a little more info later with our new models, as we have kind of an extra bump in horsepower on that one with Harvest Motion Plus. And then on top of that, that's a no def engine. So that is really, really nice for us to have no def on that 18-liter unit. So I'll continue moving forward just to recap what we have there. So when we take a look at SPFH performance influences, there are a lot of things that go into this that all come out as throughput. It all comes out at the end on how much you can get done in a day. So we're going to talk about some things about engine power and usage, knives and shear bar health, length of cut, KPs, and then heads and some other parasitics that are all tied into how much goes into the throughput of the machine. So I'd like to start up front with the headers because honestly, If you have problems in your header, then you see it coming out of the spout. If you see in this upper right picture here how smooth the crop flow is out of that machine, if we've got problems in the header, it's not nearly that clean or that pretty. So I want to make sure you're aware of things that can go wrong in the header. If we've got uneven feeding, if we've got bunching, if we have any issues with slug feeding or surging with header speeds. But let's take a look at this just a little bit deeper. So some of the things on corn heads that really affect performance are some of the settings and wear on the machine. So if you notice in this upper right picture, we have some plugging happening here. Down here, we've got a little wear showing, and I've got some more slides on that one. These are all the cleaners that we have, but these things are really get a lot of wear. There's a lot of crop that goes through these. There's a lot of moving parts. But if we have anything that is not set correctly, if we have scraper set wrong or feeler set wrong, or cleaner set wrong, I should say, then we can run into some issues in the header as we continue through the season. So if we take a look at this next picture, this is an instance where we'd start getting some material buildup. Anytime you have a plugging instance on the header, this type of buildup starts. So if you're running through the field and it's not caused by down corn or some other obstacle, and you're having issues plugging your header, to run through the field a little bit and then let the head clean out and take a look at it. Do you have any spots like this on the header where there's a material accumulation? If there are, then that's our spot that is a problem and is of concern for how that header's feeding. If we take a look here, these drums, notice how rounded some of these corners are in these drums. This is one of the cleaners. This is a new drum over here on the right. There's a cleaner on every row of teeth, and as these get rounded, or as the teeth start to wear, when you get several hours on these heads, as they wear, then we start to run into plugging issues, and we start to see things like this. So if you're seeing items here, if you're seeing buildup, then take a look at what our teeth look like, what our cleaners look like. And here's another view of cleaners. Notice how sharp and how worn these back set of feeder drums are. They start out new and square. You don't always have to have new and square, but if you get a lot of hours in one and you're running into feeding issues or crop wrapping around the back here, we can start looking at the cleaners that are on each row of teeth here. Or if these are keeping it clean, maybe we've got something going on with our teeth that are feeding. So something to keep an eye on. The next thing, if we go down further on the headers, are knife rotors and our cleaners. This picture here on the top left, obviously that's a worn out knife rotor. Notice how the wear on the front of these gets flat. This bottom picture is what a new knife looks like. So when they start to look flat like that, that's robbing horsepower. It's not giving a clean cut in the field, and can cause some performance issues, and it can cause feeding issues. The next one to look at is this cleaner. There's two of these cleaners under the bottom of every rotor. This one has quite a lot of wear on it. This picture on the right, this is a new cleaner on one of our header models. So the purpose of this cleaner is to keep material accumulation off the top of the gearbox. It keeps material accumulation, long grasses from hanging up over these short crop lifters that go under the front, and it also busts the top of the stalks. If you get these that are worn, bent, moved out of place for some reason or another, you'll start to see these material accumulations in other parts of the head, and it could be on these crop lifters in front, which will eventually lead to plugging or pushing crop down. It could be down around back a little further. But the point here is to make sure that if we have bad spots on the header, if there is material accumulation on a header, there's an adjustment on that head that can be made. So that's something that would be good to look at prior to going to corn season, going to the field this fall, so that you know you're not going to run into any issues. Moving forward, header speeds are very important. We want to match the header speed with your length of cut, with your header speed with your feederal speed. So with our machines, we have this screen in the cab, and this is of a hay pickup because I wanted to show you the options with a hay pickup. This is our dual header drive on the bottom that will automatically change your pickup reel doing hay pickup work. You want your pickup teeth to match your wheel speed, and this will automatically do that with the scale here. This upper part of this chart, this is on a hay pickup and a corn head. So when we set this, we can speed this up and slow this down, but we want to make sure our header speed is matching our length of cut, which is our feederal speed. So as we go longer length of cut, if this box is checked, the header will automatically speed up and keep that flow good. If we take a look at these on the right, these sensitivity adjustments for auto header height. So as you go through the field, rough fields, we can automatically adjust and follow the contour of the ground, and that sensitivity is adjustable in the machine. One thing to keep in mind is if we're seeing you as an operator in the seat are the best eyes for this situation. If the crop is pulling in hard or you can see it bunching up, then we need to do something and change our header speed. Again, what's happening at the header or what's happening with the handoff between the header and the feed rolls has a large impact on the crop flow through the machine. Just to give a real quick overview of components on the machine, just for terminology reasons, we have feed rolls up front, then we go into a cutter head, then we have our kernel processor, accelerator or blower, then we go up through the transition and out through the spout. So if we start up at the cutter head and feed rolls, I mentioned length of cut earlier. So the length of cut is controlled by our feed rolls and the speed at which those feed rolls run. So if you're cutting at a 7 millimeter length of cut, the feed rolls are going to be running pretty slow. If you're up to 26 millimeter length of cut, they're going to be running as fast as they can. We do offer different options for cutter head knife drums, and with that, you get a different range of length of cut. Our length of cut is infinitely variable, so you can change that on the fly as you're going through the field. Typically in North America, guys are running one of these two setups on the left, a 40 or a 48 knife drum, and it gives us a difference in range of our cutter head. The feed rolls are hydraulically driven, so that helps with the engagement, and it helps with the feeding as well. If we take a look at our cutter head and shear bar, I mentioned cutter head. This is what the cutter head looks like with this. This would be a 48 knife setup. Notice the knives are brand new. They're sharp. The shear bar is brand new. The next pictures I'm going to show you won't look this pretty, but this is what a new knives and new shear bar should look like. So we do offer two sets of knives. We have grass knives and we have corn knives. There is a difference in these knives. The grass knives are flat and the corn knives are cupped. The reason we do that is for efficiency in feeding. A grass knife pulls more air, and when you're running in grass type crops or lighter crops, you need more air to help pull that crop through and feed effectively. With a corn knife, corn is heavier and it does better throwing. If you think about it, take a scoop shovel and throw a scoop shovel of grass or throw a scoop shovel of corn. That's going to be the effect difference between these two knives. So in corn, you get a better efficiency with the corn knife. You get a cleaner cut with the corn knife. You do not, however, want to run a corn knife in grass. With this cup, this curvature in the knife, we can, if we were to catch a rock or some foreign obstacle, the kickback feature that we have from our slotted knives doesn't work as well, and the knife will try to peel off instead of push back. So if you run a hay pickup work, make sure you're running a grass knife. And corn, we have the corn knife. If you want to run one grass knife for all year, then stick with the grass knife. You'll be safe that way. So if we take a look on further on knives and optimization, whenever we've had a issue with cut quality or cut complaints, a lot of the times it comes down to the quality of the knives. There are a lot of different things that can be done. One of the biggest things I see is that guys will say they sharpen and they do normal sharpen. So then we ask, well, did you look at the knives? A lot of times guys don't look at the knives. Make sure you're looking at your cutter head knives after each time you sharpen. So the sharpening and the throughput, the chop quality, and the performance of the machine has a drastic impact on what the cutter head knives look like. So in this picture here on the top left, this is a corn knife that's got curve that was running in hay pickup work, and it's picked up some dirt and it's picked up some rocks. This will not give you very good cut quality. This picture in the upper right has developed some hooks in the knife. And down the bottom left here, this one's been sharpened, but you notice this front edge, it's not near sharp enough yet. And then over here on the right, we're starting to see our self-sharpening effect with corn and the corn knives. So if you start to see issues like this, we can correct them out by the sharpening. When you're on this picture, the left two pictures or the bottom right picture, simply we need more sharpening. This upper right picture, if you start to see hooks on either end of your knife or a different position, we can increase our finishing passes here in our display when we go to sharpen. Finishing passes, it just simply cleans them up and keeps everything clean. If you get these hooks like we're showing here, then we'll start to run into issues with the gap across our shear bar that I'm showing in this picture. A wider gap gives you a more ragged cut, takes more power, and creates more wear on the other components. So if we're looking at cut quality, there are different types of cut quality issues. So is it an issue with the stalks? Is it an issue with the leaves, uncracked kernels? Let's take a look at these a little bit and see what can be done if you're seeing this in your pile. One thing to keep in mind is when you are taking a sample or you're pulling samples, you really need to do that when a machine is loaded. These machines are designed to be loaded and be running under power. If you are checking a feed at the top of the truck, or when the machine gets to a headland turn at the end, the machine is not loaded, and you'll have more of a tendency to see inconsistent stock. So if you're checking a truck or a bucket, make sure you dig down in there, because then you'll actually get a relative sample for the feed that is in that truck. So if we're looking at too many stocks coming in, this goes back to feeding the machine or the header. So this can go clear back to the header. Are we having issues in the header? Is there a plug? Is there crop coming in sideways? So we could be a bad synchronization between the header and the feed drill speed. So all the things I talked about on the header side can lead to issues like we're seeing over here on the right. You notice in this one, we've got the cutting angle. This tells us the black lines are the cutting angle. This tells us the stalk came in sideways. So, sometimes in down corn or corn that's had corn borers, or you're harvesting one corn row, that's situations where we're not fully loading the machine, and you'll end up seeing more of this. That's not specific to any machine. That's just the nature of the beast and how these things work. So if you're taking samples, make sure you're going down a little deeper. If you're seeing too many corn leaves, then this kind of goes back to our feeding channel, our cutter head. If we've got some wet conditions, if we get mud build up on our feed rolls, the feed rolls don't control the speed of that crop flow very good, and you'll end up with some raggedy cuts, and you'll end up with some corn leaves in here. If the crop is slipping, you'll see this. If we've got worn out knives, we'll see this. So there are different things that can kind of go into the longer stalks I've seen or the longer ears that I've seen. I've got a few of them listed out here, but the main things are that we keep our knives sharp, we keep our header cleaned up, and we keep our gap set. So another thing is, with too many leaves, this could cause too many leaves. I was showing a picture earlier of a hook on a knife. This is a perfect situation of that. This shear bar here has had some rock damage or something like that. Notice how it's not clean and consistent. Or if we have a shear bar that's set like this upper right, we've got a huge gap here. When these are set correctly, when the knives are sharp and the shear bar is set right, you should be able to cut a piece of paper in here. When we look at setting our shear bar optimization, just to give an example here, the chart on the left is showing a sharp knife, the green line, and the yellow line is a blunt knife, or a knife that's not been sharpened, similar to one of the pictures I was showing earlier. If we look here at this would be 0.6 millimeter clearance to the shear bar on a sharp knife. It takes as much power as a dull knife with a 0.2 millimeter clearance of a shear bar. So knives are super important to the performance of the machine and how much power that it takes to actually run that machine. So in addition to having the knife sharp to consume your power, setting the shear bar is super important. The pictures over here on the right, this is a standard grass shear bar. This is a typical wear pattern for a grass shear bar. When you're running corn, it has a different wear pattern. It digs out around the backside of the carbide and leaves a sharp edge here. So we do have different shear bars for different conditions. We also have a Durline Plus shear bar that you can leave in with all crops. How often should you adjust a shear bar? So we recommend 3 shear bar adjustments for each grinding cycle. We recommend two sharpening cycles per day or every 4 hours in hay pickup work, and then once a day is fine in corn. But if you set that shear bar 3 times between grindings, that will tremendously help. Think about it like a pair of scissors. If you've got a loose pair of scissors that are dull, they don't cut very good. They're still dull, but you tighten the nut in the middle, that really, you can kind of get somewhere at that point, right? Okay, the next thing I had on the list for feed is processing. So let's take a little look at kernel processing here. So kernel processors are measured with CSPS score. So what we're looking at is getting every kernel to a 4.75 millimeter size. So when you get a kernel that is cracked 4 times, then it's in this 4.75 millimeter range. This is where the experts have proven that gets us where the starch is all digested and for milk production. If you can 70% is a number everybody goes by. That's kind of our optimal number. You can over process. I've heard that much over 80% KP score it adds no value to you. So what we're looking at here is cracking all the kernels, or 70% of the kernels, to get an optimal number for kernel processing. So keep in mind that a longer length of cut, the KP does work harder, and when we're in tougher conditions, the KP also works harder. So the gap here typically runs anywhere from 1 millimeter to 3 millimeters. It really depends on the setup, and I'll go a little bit over our setups and options we offer. But we're putting a lot of crop through a 2 millimeter gap, or whatever's needed to make the processor work effectively here. One of the methods for testing this is over here on the bottom right. This is a Penn State shaker box. This is pretty widely known, so that's one method. There are several other methods. There's a water method. There's cup methods. So there's various methods to see where you're at and see how many kernels or whole kernels are more than 4.75 millimeters to get in a good idea of where you're at for processing. Some of the things that we need to do on a kernel processor is we need to check what our gap actually is, and if you've got motors on your KP, that needs to be calibrated in the machine. If we're having issues with processing, we can change our roll speed differential. Maybe something's come out of parallel and we need to reset parallel on the rolls, or they could be simply worn out. So we'll kind of look at that a little bit more, wore out, but notice how close the teeth are together in these images. We've got different number tooth profile, and the teeth are running against each other for being more aggressive. If we take a look at the KPs, maintenance on all KPs is mandatory every year. So we have different process for premium or the extreme, but one of the things we want to do, especially if you're reusing your rolls, is get some rust preventative on your rolls over winter. If we start to see spots like either one of these pictures, as soon as you hit crop, this rust is going to go away. You're going to have imbalance in your rolls, and you're likely going to see some imperfections in your processing performance. You'll see higher wear here in this area as well. So there's no reason to use these up any faster than needed. So let's protect those rolls when they sit over winter. So how to tell when a roll is worn? So customer needs maybe is one, or the teeth rounded. So really we just need to take a look at them. Are the teeth rounded? Are you plugging the machine? First signs of rolls getting worn is you're consistently plugging the machine, as long as we don't have an issue somewhere in front of that. What we offer for KPs today is we have two KPs, a premium KP and an extreme KP. They are both very good options. Extreme KP is a more aggressive processor. If we look at the different options that we have here offered today, we've got two different tooth combinations in our premium KP, and we've got 3 different options with the extreme, and then we also offer a small grains processor. So the difference here between the two KPs, if you notice, the tooth differences here. So we're at 110, 145. We also have a similar option over here in our premium. If we move on up, we have 145, 165. We've got a 120, 160. That's a larger diameter. Each one of these steps is a more aggressive processor. So when we go higher tooth count or higher differential, 40% to 50%, then a higher differential, higher tooth count, then we improve our processing and makes it more aggressive. The purpose for doing that is so that you can open your KP rolls up and get the same processing level, and that will improve your performance, and it'll decrease your fuel consumption and help out with your throughput. When we go behind the KP, then we're looking at our blower rotor or blower or accelerator. There are some adjustments on this blower. So we recommend 3 millimeter paddle setting. There is an inlet scraper and there is an outlet scraper. These do need to be checked. As your paddles wear, or if they're changed, or as the scrapers wear, this can cause crop to carry over, also hurting your performance of the machine. Behind the blower, we've got our transition and our spouts. These transitions do have wear liners in them. That goes clear back to 7000 series machines. Spout liners all the way up to the top. You can typically see when a spout liner wears out because crop starts leaking. You oftentimes don't see these liners when they start getting a hole in them, because it'll wear through the liner prior to wearing through here. That's the same with our blower band and our spiral band that's coming from the front under the cutter head, under the blower. So if you have holes in any of these spots, for sure you're going to see it. You're going to see it come out of the spout, and you're gonna see some performance issues. Let's go on here. I brought this one in to kind of show the harvest lab. So I want to hit a couple points on the harvest lab that we have mounted on the spout here. So the harvest lab really is a multi-tool that we have for documentation in the machine. So with the harvest lab, we can measure forage. We can also put it on a manure tanker or drag line. With the drag line, we can measure the nutrients that we're putting back into the soil, and then so now we've got coming out of the soil, going back into the soil, and then we have a stationary unit that you can measure what's coming out of your pit or your bunk. This is the same sensor. You can take it from one to the next if that is feasible for you. So on the machine side, Harvest Lab 3000, we have different constituents that we offer with that. Moisture comes with every Harvest Lab, but then we offer these other items on the right: protein, starch, NDF, ADF, sugar, and ash. So that if you have a harvest lab on a machine, we do offer these. This is stuff that can be valued by the nutritionist or the guys at the dairy, or who's making the rations at the dairy. So all of this information is also available ensiled. You can get it off the machine, and you can get it ensiled out of the pit. When we look at the harvest lab as well, this we have auto lock technology. Auto lock helps with feed quality. So when we look at feed quality, it also goes clear into the bunk, right? So with auto lock, we can set our moistures and our length of cuts, because when you're at a drier crop, then you typically want to cut at a little bit shorter so that you get the right bunk density when you get it to the pit. We can do that automatically with the machine. You can set the values in here, and it'll automatically change the length of cut based off of the moisture. When we go ahead and look at the bunk density, have you guys ever heard of the rule of 800? They're 800 pounds per ton going in the bunk. That's what's really supposed to be in there when you're packing your bunks. So we want to just make sure you're aware of that, so that we can get bunk density where it needs to be. When we take a look here at documentation, so I talked about the harvest lab, I talked about what it can do. We can document all of the constituents that we had listed there. All of this information can be uploaded into Ops Center. You know what you've got, you know what come out of your field. You can also use this for knowing when to harvest. If you notice this moisture line here, there are some green lines that are running through the middle. That means this customer went around the outside, he opened the field up a couple times, and then he came back at a later date and then he harvested this. It's drier. And you can see the same thing in the starch. So we got higher starch content on those days when he came back. So the harvest lab can be utilized for that information. With that, you can monitor your varieties, and then pick which one's the best. Are you looking for tons? Are you looking for tons in the field, or are you looking for starch? What's your goal here for the yields that you have in the field? We can monitor all that with the harvest lab. I want to take the last 2 minutes here and tell you about our new F8 and F9 series forage harvesters. So today we have a 8,000 series and 9,000 series. One's a narrow body, one's a wide body machine. We still have that going into the next generation of machine that will be offered model year 26. F8 is a narrow body machines. F9 is a wide body machines. We have a lot of new features and functionality with this machine. It is more or less a ground up design change. We offer the JD14X engine, which is a 13.6 liter engine in our F8 series models. We offer a JD18X in our F9 500 to 700. This engine is still with no def. This over here on the right, we get a 65 horsepower bump on the 500, and we get a 52 on the 600 and a 35 on the 700. So when you get in the sweet spot, 1350, 1400 RPMs, you actually get more horsepower at that point with this lineup. When we look at F9 900 and 1000, these two both got horsepower bumps as well. The F9 900 is replacing the 9800, and the F9 1000 is replacing 9900 up to 1020 PS, which is 1006 horsepower. So we really put a lot of thought and effort into product quality and customer focus with this machine. The new name and numbering, we've got new higher horsepower top models. We've got Harvest Motion on the complete lineup, which Harvest Motion is speed efficiency and speed matching through the gearboxes and the drivetrain of the machine, regardless of what engine RPM you're at. We have improved productivity and efficiency. We have new KP lineup, new inoculant dosing system, and of course, operator comfort. So with our new cab here in the middle image, we've got a new tech stack here, and we have a swivel seat that everybody's been asking for a long time. New Gen 5 displays, complete new electrical system in the machine, ground speed automation. Ground speed automation, you can put a novice driver in the machine and get full productivity out of the machine. Pro Touch Harvest, which allows a single button push and you're in the field running. Engine power adjust, meaning if you have a F9 1000 and you're running light hay work, you can push a setting and it will drop it down a couple hundred levels in machines and save fuel. Then, of course, we have our life cycle solutions with JD Link, expert alerts that will alert the dealer and alert the customer if there are issues coming on with the machine. Quality and improvements and midterm reliability is a very large focus on F8 and F9 series machines. So this is there was a lot of focus put in there. I think if any of you have seen this machine, you'll notice that the routings and the placement and the serviceability has really changed and really improved. So again, a real quick overview of the machine, new electrical system, ground speed automation. Here's a quick image of our two new processors. Ultimate 250 is a new John Deere Premium, Ultimate 250 replacing a Premium. It's a 10-inch KP. And then we have Extreme 305, which is a 12-inch processor. Both KPs go in both models. Inoculant dosing system, brand new system, insulated tank, larger tank, and then, of course, our larger cab that I talked about earlier. So if you want to see this machine, we have it coming up at some shows. The next time it will be at an event will be the Farm Progress Show next week. We'll also be at the World Dairy Expo, U.S. Custom Harvesters, and World Ag Expo.
All right, thank you, Shane. Those are very pretty machines. So thank you for that overview. And it's hard to believe the Farm Progress Show is already next week. It's kind of crazy how this summer flew by.
Right, yep.
Our last speaker this evening is Teresa Van Sloten. Teresa, I'll go ahead and have you load your slides up, if you don't mind, while I go ahead and introduce you. Teresa is the County Executive Director for the Sioux County Farm Service Agency in Orange City. She'll be discussing the livestock forage program and the importance of certifying forage acres correctly, plus the livestock indemnity program for weather-related livestock deaths. Teresa has been working at the Farm Service Agency in Orange City for 15 years. She grew up in Northwest Iowa on a family farm, married a hog farmer, so agriculture has always been part of her life. She was an expert hog sorter/loader until hogs started going out at $3.25 a pound. It was at that time she decided to retire and stick to her office job. She started at FSA in 2010 and as a program technician in charge of disaster programs and farm records. Due to CED retirement and long-term vacancy in Sioux County, Teresa has led the team in Orange City for several years. She traveled around the state for training in 2023 and officially became the CED in the Orange City office in January 2024. She enjoys the fast pace of the office and the challenge of learning the rules and regulations of every new program that surfaces at FSA. Building a relationship with the producers and helping them be successful is her favorite part of the job. She and her husband live on an acreage south of Orange City, have 2 adult daughters who are on their own, plus a sweet lab and a naughty little mutt who runs the show at their house. With that, Teresa, we will hand the floor over to you.
All right, thank you, Gail. I am Teresa from the Farm Service Agency. Probably talked to many of you. I'm in the Sioux County office. I know this is a broader group of dairy farmers, so all of these programs I'm going to be talking about today can be available to you in any county office that you are physically located in. So we're going to start out, we don't have a ton of forage programs. I know Fred was hoping I could discuss that, but I'm going to kind of just talk quickly about some of our disaster programs, which include some forage. Our livestock forage program, or we like to call it LFP, it provides compensation to producers who suffer grazing losses. So a lot of our programs are for disaster are set up for grazing animals. So it's a little bit tougher to get into some of these programs. If you have animals on feedlots or, you know, at the dairy, if you don't have them grazing, they're not going to be eligible for some of these programs. But I will, you know, share a couple of things that you could also dig into for other disasters. If you have covered livestock that are grazing and we are in a drought, you can get some assistance for, you know, grazing losses because the grass is dried up. So if the land is physically located in the county that is at least 8 weeks of a D2 severe drought, we are eligible for LFP. So during the normal grazing period, which is, I think, let's see, for most of us here, it's April 15 to October 15. And if your cattle have been grazing on that pasture and we hit D2 for 8 weeks, that automatically kicks in and you'll be able to apply for LFP. And what you'll get is a monthly payment for grazing losses, just to buy some feed to supplement while the cattle are in their dry pasture, or if you had to move them. Eligible grazing land, we look at 2 different types. We look at your native unimproved, and we also look at your improved pasture. Native unimproved is pretty much just grass, brome, that is probably a lot of tree coverage. If you want to report that as improved, you have to do regular maintenance on the pasture and, you know, reseeding and things like that, spraying for weeds. If you maintain it, you're going to get more acres per animal unit for your payment. So to be an eligible livestock producer, you have to own those cattle or sheep or whatever you have grazing during the 60 days prior to the beginning of the qualifying drought. And usually, you know, like I said, the grazing season starts April 15 and we have to be in the D2 for 8 weeks. So usually around the beginning of June, if it's been awfully dry, you can always check with us to see if we've hit D2 or not. We go off the US Drought Monitor and we watch it pretty closely if it's dry. We've had LFP for several, I think 2021 through 2024 for some of the counties. So it's been out there. If we get to June and it's awfully dry, you just need to contact your office to see if it is available for you. You have to own or rent the land that the cattle or sheep are grazing on. And you also have to certify your pasture. And we work closely with you to get the right pasture type, because there's coding on that, you know, that's going to tell us what type of payment you get. If it's not improved, you're not going to get as many animal units per acre. So eligible covered livestock, they're grazing animals, both adult and weaned, non-adult. If you have 20 cow-calf pairs out there, we're only going to count the adult cows. So we're going to count 20. We're not going to count 40. We usually have beef or sheep, but you can also, if you have buffalo, alpacas, llamas, sheep, goats, any of those grazing animals. And you also must be maintaining these livestock for commercial purposes. So if you just have a horse out there that's your pet or you like to ride it, that's not commercial use. You're not going to be able to apply for LFP for something like that. These animals are grazing animals that you're raising to sell. And here's what I was talking about with the improved pasture and unimproved pasture, our carrying capacities we look at when we make our determination of how much you're going to get paid. If you are doing regular overseeding, fertilizing, and maintenance on the pasture, we're going to count 2 acres per animal unit. We also look at tree canopy. So if you have unimproved and you've got quite a bit of tree canopy, notice we can go all the way down from 4 acres per animal unit to 15. So we take a look at your pasture, we get it certified, and then we code it accordingly for the benefits. To apply for benefits, like I said, you just need to contact our office. There's an application to complete. We will let you know if we have hit that D2 drought. I should go back over here. So here's what it shows. If we hit D2 for 8 weeks, you're going to get one payment for a month. If we hit D3 for even one day, you're going to get a payment for 3 months in a row. And on down the line, if we hit D4, which we did a few years ago, even for one day, you're going to get 4 monthly payments. And that's just to help supplement buying feed because your cattle aren't getting the nutrients and anything they need out on the pasture. I threw in a quick little calculator. This is from 2024. We obviously didn't need it this year, so because we aren't even close to a drought. So monthly payment rate is equal to 60% of the lesser of either of the monthly feed cost or for all covered livestock owned or leased by the eligible livestock producer, or calculated by using normal carrying capacity. So that just kind of shows how much you would get paid. That was 2024. I believe payment rates went up a little bit since then, but that's how much we would pay per animal unit per acre. The other program we have that does include some forage is the ELAP program. It provides emergency assistance to eligible producers, and ELAP covers a lot of different things. Livestock, honeybees, and farm-raised fish. We don't have any farm-raised fish, but we do have a lot of livestock and honeybees in this area. So if you have losses due to eligible disease, adverse weather, or other conditions, you can apply for ELAP. And there's it's for losses that are not covered by LFP. So it's just kind of different ways of helping supplement some things if you have a disaster. And for this program, you have to report your loss by March 1 of the year following the disaster. And this is where we stop and say to a producer, never wait until February 28 to report your loss from the year before. If you feel like you had a disaster and you're wondering if this is something that could be covered, contact us right away and we'll work through that with you to see if there's a program that fits. For ELAP, you have to be an eligible producer, which means you have to own the livestock. Or in some cases, you can also be a custom grower, but the custom grower we look at for swine and poultry only, and it depends on what the agreement is within that custom agreement. So we have to look at that as well. You have to have the eligible livestock, which just like LFP, they have to be grown for commercial use. And you have to have eligible grazing land, which we talked about too. You have to have that certified every year through our office. So you are also required, like I said, to file the 578 acreage report for your pasture every year. And we have a great thing that we can do now. You certify your pasture, and we have what we call continuous certification. It automatically certifies the pasture every year, so you don't have to report that to us. If anything changes, you'll have to let us know, but otherwise we just go with those same acres then for your pasture. So we jump into livestock assistance. For eligible livestock losses, one of them is a grazing loss. So I use the example of last year's flood in Sioux County. We had a lot of grazing losses. We had guys who had to pull their cattle off pasture because the pasture was covered in water. So they have a choice. We can apply for this eligible livestock loss, and we can look at the number of days they were off pasture. And we also look at whether they had to supplement with extra feed, which is above normal. So if they didn't usually have to supplement and they did this time, they have to provide bills. So then we pay whichever one gives them more money. If you didn't have to supplement feed, we just look at the number of grazing days off pasture and we'll pay on those days. We also have a program, the ELAP also helps with purchased livestock feed and produced and harvested feed. The best example I can give is what we had last year. Some guys had bought a bunch of bales and they either floated down the river or sat in water and they were damaged or destroyed and could not be used as feed anymore. We can help supplement that. Our county committee comes up with an amount of what they feel like a bale is worth. And we document that at the beginning of the year and we go with that amount. And our county committee is pretty knowledgeable of all different types of agriculture. And they go to the Rock Valley hay sale and they pick a fair price for that. So we paid quite a few guys on purchased bales that they lost in the flood. We also have produced and harvested feed. So if you cut the hay yourself and baled it and you lost some of those, we can also pay for that. You have to have proof. And here's where I'm really going to hammer this down. Farmers are notorious for not having any paperwork. So what we like to stress to you guys is document everything. Keep track of what you're purchasing, keep your invoices, keep track of what you're baling, just keep a log of how many hay bales you baled, how many you fed, whatever you do with those, because you're going to need that documentation to prove to us that you lost some. And according to our handbook, if we don't have that reliable documentation, we can't approve your application. So we really stress with all of these disaster programs to keep good documentation and good records of that. And then here's the additional feed purchased above normal. With that one, you're going to have to show us bills from what you purchased feed for the last 2 years plus what you purchased this year. So there are quite a few hoops you have to jump through, verifications you need to provide, because we want to be able to have proof that says, oh, yep, they don't usually spend this much money on feed. They had to buy it because of the disaster. Then we're going to look at that and we're going to compare it to how many days they were off pasture, and we're going to pay whichever one is the most. So for ELAP, eligible adverse weather events for the livestock feed losses include blizzards, winter storms, excessive wind, floods, lightning, and tornadoes. And for livestock grazing losses, blizzards, winter storms, floods, hail, and lightning. For ELAP, drought isn't an eligible cause because we include that in the LFP program. So again, for ELAP livestock, they have to be grazing animals, adult and wean, non-adult. They have to have been normally grazing there. I mean, if you just put them out there for a couple of days and that's not your usual practice, we look at that also. They have to be owned, leased, or purchased under contract, and they have to be maintained for commercial use. And there's just a lot of different things with ELAP. So if you have a disaster and you're wondering if any of this grazing stuff might be something that you're eligible for, you just give us a call. We've got fact sheets that we can share with you and just information. We ask a lot of questions to find out if there's something that you fit into as far as a program to apply for. Another thing that has absolutely nothing to do with forage, but it's something that has to do, we've had cattle guys that have applied for LIP, Livestock Indemnity Program. It provides benefits to livestock owners and contract growers for livestock deaths in excess of normal mortality, or if livestock were injured and sold at a reduced price because of this adverse eligible weather event. So when you apply for LIP, you're going to first give us a notice of loss. Again, the deadline is March 1 of the following year, but we suggest you call as soon as you have deaths. If you had 10 cows die after a whole week of 100-degree heat, give us a call. You're better off reporting it right away while it's fresh in your mind. And then once we get the information from you, we have you sign that notice of loss, we take it to county committee. They decide if it's an eligible weather event, whether you're an eligible producer, and whether that's eligible livestock. If all of those fit, then we go on to the application for payment. And that's when you start providing your verifications for us, because you're going to have to prove your inventory for every kind, type, and weight. You're going to have to prove the deaths. It's like I said, documentation is very important for these programs. So an eligible loss condition, eligible adverse weather event for LIP, hail, lightning, tornadoes, floods, blizzards, winter storm, extreme cold, straight line winds, and extreme heat. The eligible disease transmitted by vector and exacerbated by weather, those are pretty much cattle related. And we have a veterinarian certification that you have to take to your vet. They have to verify that these deaths were a direct result of this disease. We don't have too many, we haven't really had any of those, but it is an option if you have something like that. Also eligible attack, we've never had any of those, but we got a lot of coyotes out here and there's sheep out there, so it's possible. It's on the producers to show to our satisfaction or to county committee's satisfaction that an eligible loss condition occurred. It has to be in excess of normal mortality, which is, sometimes a struggle because it's hard to explain what normal mortality is, but I'll go over that in a minute. You have to be an eligible producer, you have to assume the production and market risk associated with that livestock. You have to be raising that livestock for commercial use. They don't have to be grazing animals. They can be any kind. We had a dairy get hit by a tornado several years ago, and some of their cattle died because the building fell on them. that's something that they can apply for, because the tornado was extreme and out of the ordinary, and that was definitely a disaster event. So again, for LIP, if you're a contract grower for poultry or swine, you also may be eligible. Just depends on the terms of your contract. Eligible livestock must have been owned by an eligible owner on the day of the loss condition. So if there's a blizzard, you have to own those cattle, and you have to be able to show that to us. And also, again, maintained or produced for commercial use, for livestock sale or production of products like milk or eggs. So, that includes, so then that throws in your dairy cows. So dairy cows, adult or non-adult beef cattle, we kind of break that out by weight, kind, type. And there's different normal mortality rates for each one. Here's kind of a list of the normal mortality rates. This was for after 2019, 29 and subsequent. Adult beef cow normal mortality rate is 1.5%. Non-adult 800 plus pound is 1%. If you go down to like swine, feeder pig, normal mortality is 10%. 150 pound plus is 3%. So there's all different normal mortality rates. And what we look at is if you have 1,000 head of hogs and you lost 3 of them due to normal reasons, just in the normal everyday life, because hogs die for different reasons, those count towards your normal mortality total. But then if you lost 30 due to a flood or excessive heat or something like that, then we put that towards your normal mortality. Once you hit that percentage, those hogs were 150 pounds plus, that's 3%. If you hit 3%, we're going to pay any of your disaster deaths over that 3%. So it's kind of a hard one to explain, because they just think that if your livestock die, they're going to get paid on the number of head that died, but that's not the case with this program. It's kind of hard to figure out why they did it that way, because it's hard to understand why we have to do it that way, but that's what we're stuck with. So we just ask that you keep good records. Daily logs help us a ton, because you guys do great with, at least hog guys do a good job of keeping track of deaths, daily logs. So that helps a ton. Cattle guys usually pretty good with the sheep tags and the cattle tags too. So that helps us too on the daily log for any deaths that you might have. So LIP is another weather related thing that you can apply for with us. And, with all of these, if you have questions, just give us a call. We'll be able to tell you if it's something that is eligible, or if we think you should apply, if you meet the criteria, and then we'll go from there. Other forage programs, we have NAP. It's non-insured crop disaster assistance program. It's available for anybody who has a crop that's not insurable, and it would help pay on any losses you may have. And it can be used for forage. Eligible causes of loss include drought, freeze, hail, excessive moisture, excessive wind, flood, excessive heat, plant disease, and insect infestation. And it's kind of like a buy-up coverage. You can buy up on that. There's a service fee per crop if you apply for it. And also, it is like a premium, and it is fairly expensive. I will say that the maximum is $15,750 for a premium. We've never done it in Sioux County. Not a lot of guys really want to pay insurance on their pasture. We don't have tons of acres. But there might be some of you out there in different counties that have a lot of acres, and it might be something that's lucrative for you to check into. The thing is with this one, crop acreage must be reported regularly. Producers also have to provide the quantity of all harvested production, disposition, verifiable or reliable crop production records. They have to report when any weather-related issues occur. It's a very involved program for probably not a real big payout, but it is something that we do offer. We also have CRP grasslands, and that's something we just had that one open as a CRP open enrollment period that closed on August 8. But if you have some grasslands that fit the criteria, you can also have cattle grazing on those grasslands and still get a CRP payment on that. The thing with the CRP grasslands is there is a significant offer process that includes ranking, a study of the land eligibility, a national ranking and selection after that. Then they look at what available practice acres are and cost share rates. And then COC determines if you are eligible or not. So obviously, we don't know when the next sign up will be because we really haven't gotten any new information on the new farm bill yet. So the sign up period just closed on August 8th. So I would think maybe, next year that might open up again. And if that's something that you would like to check into, you check with your county office and kind of just listen up for updates on whether there's a grassland sign up or not. We also, during drought, we have CRP emergency haying and grazing. We have to be in that severe drought of D2 or higher, and you have to have a loss in forage production. You have to submit a request to our office, and there is paperwork to complete. And then NRCS will modify your conservation plan to allow for emergency haying, which will be authorized up to 60 days, and grazing will be authorized for 90 days. And you have to end either one of those 30 days before the estimated first freeze date. So there's a lot of rules that go along with some of these grazing programs, but they're worth checking into if we get into a drought again and you need some more grazing area, we have that program as well. So in closing, I just want to say, if you have questions, just give us a call. When in doubt, call your local office. We always have someone here who's very willing to help answer your questions, to kind of lead you in the right direction to what you may or may not be eligible for. And we also suggest that you document, keep good records, because your eligibility depends on it. And that is the biggest struggle for us, is to get good, reliable documentation. So we can help you if you have that good documentation for us. So I would just suggest, if you haven't started documenting, make sure you've got some good documentation, because that's what our county committee makes their decision on, whether you're eligible or not. So that's also very important. Also, don't wait until February 28th to report your loss. Give us a call as soon as it happens, or while it's fresh in your mind. Also, if it's like a lip situation where the livestock have died, take some pictures. Make sure there's a date on them if you can get a date on them. Anything to document these things is good. We had a laugh. We needed proof from a producer who had ELAP last year. He lost bales that he had harvested himself, and county committee just said, does he own a baler? So he went out and took a picture of the baler for us, and they decided that that was enough proof that he baled his own hay. So we could help pay for some of the bales that he lost. So, anything that you can do to document, keep pictures, just keep this information always ready in case we need it for one of these disaster programs. And then we have fact sheets and more information on our programs, and you can always go to farmers.gov or fsa.usda.gov. Each office also sends out a monthly gov delivery. And I believe if you go to the fsa.usda.gov and then /subscribe, you can subscribe to any county newsletter you want as well. And what we're each doing in our county is putting out pertinent information that pertains to just us in our local area. And we like to just get that helpful information out for anybody who wants to keep up to date on all the newest programs and things that are available. So that is all I have. We have a lot of different programs, and I just suggest, if you have a question, just give us a call.
All right. Thank you very much, Teresa, for that. And thank you to all our speakers for their presentations. I'll open it up. If anybody has any questions, you can leave them in the chat, or we're a small enough group, we can shout them out. I did jot down a couple questions myself to get us started. And Shane and Dr. Carr and Teresa, I know you were having trouble with your video, but anybody who wants to turn their videos on, you're welcome to. So Dr. Carr, I'll start with you. Really interesting talk about tar spot and some of the issues with tar spot. Kind of depressing, right? But really interesting to see that economic impact there. If you have a field with severe tar spot, what recommendations do you have in terms of silage management and harvesting? Is there anything that farmers can do to kind of mitigate some of that risk? And Shane or Teresa too, if you have any thoughts as well and want to pipe up, you can also feel free to add to the discussion. But and you're muted. Yeah.
Sorry about that. So yeah, it's definitely, I mean, if you are seeing a high risk environment in your field and the tar spot is progressing very fast, it's always recommended to harvest sooner than later. Like, maybe so waiting on the moisture to get to 65% might put you in a very tricky situation, because with tar spot the moisture levels can fall down quite rapidly. So just keeping an eye on that. And then at that point the milk line is not very reliable, and we have kind of seen from a lot of research around that this relationship between the milk line and moisture that we were kind of eyeballing for a lot of years has been and a little bit iffy these with the newer hybrids and the stay green hybrids. So yeah, so it's definitely recommended in a way that harvest sooner than later. And secondly, I mean, if the crop is around R3, R4, it's just not viable for a fungicide spray. It's going to actually put you in a spot where your harvest might be delayed now because you applied fungicide. So that's kind of out of the window. And yep, and then the third option that we look at sometimes, but that kind of work in both ways, is to maybe raise and maybe Shane can pitch in a little bit more on that, increase the height of a chopper a little bit so that you don't lose that much on digestibility, but that also comes with the added risk of losing the dry matter. I'm sorry,
Biomass, yeah.
I don't have a direct answer for that.
Yeah.
It's like I
No,
just try
perfect.
to cover all those.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good, it's not a question that there's a direct answer to, right? It's a
Yeah.
pretty complicated system that we're working with. So
Yeah, and we're kind of only 10 years in. It's just might seem like a long time, but in research it's just not. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah, yep. Any relationship with mycotoxins? If you have a field with tar spot, are you at risk for other diseases like or mycotoxins?
yes, so definitely a field which is infested with tar spot, your plants have already compromised defense system, so that puts them to a higher risk of mycotoxins. And also because tar spot kind of prefers the conditions where you have you have to have a consistent night wetness, so
Mhm.
that also increases the overall moisture levels in the field, so that you might have fusarium infections, specifically with the pink ear rot, and then that would eventually result in dawn accumulation. So that put your field on high risk. And then secondly, because the stalk strength is also compromised, lodging risks are also increased, which may have an impact on overall harvester efficiency. I mean, chopping a lodged feed, it's not fun. So yeah.
Yeah. That's great news. Yeah.
Maybe Shane has some answers for
Yes,
that.
maybe Shane can help us.
Well, those situations are tough, of course, right? So, if the corn is drying down faster as the kernel starch content where you're at, I mean, that's where Harvest Lab, I guess, can really provide value for that. You can go in the field and it takes 4,000 readings a second. You know right away what your moisture content is of the whole plant, and you know what your starch content is. So that can be a pretty valuable tool if we're running into some diseases like we're talking about here.
Mhm.
Yeah, and with the
Shane,
mycotoxins,
go
it's
ahead.
like, I mean, it is expensive to get them analyzed, but it is more expensive to, have your livestock which is not eating what you're
Yeah.
feeding them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's they can be tricky and and there's a diffuse symptoms, right? So you might have off feed, or you might have health issues or reproductive, like depending on what mycotoxins you have and where. And it's not an easy question to answer, but certainly one that can have a lot of economic impact.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shane, you mentioned a few things, stalks, length of cut, too many leaves, kernel processing. You mentioned a bunch of things that we should be watching while we're chopping. How often do you want folks to actually get out and take a look, right? When you're harvesting, everybody's busy, everybody's, go, go, go. How often are we slowing down and taking a look at what we're doing?
Well, I mean, it's really dependent. There's usually somebody at the pit that's saying, "Hey, it's not good enough." But
Mhm.
I mean, you can see a lot of it when you're chopping in the machine anyways. And if you notice a problem with the header, you're gonna catch it right away anyways. So I just want to help customers, prevent that downtime and prepare for some of that prior to season because I really kind of pointed out most of the things that can cause issues as we get started into corn season. And if you're already prepared to go in, then you won't have those issues. If you do see some of them through the field, then you can kind of go back to some of the information I shared as well. And are your knives good enough? And I'd say, I mean, you definitely need to look at what your silage looks like going into the pit because once it's cut and if you don't catch it at the end of the day, then you may have a whole pit of silage that's not desirable, right? So it definitely needs checked randomly through the day, but I think most have their nutritionist, around at times, and there's other people that are looking other than the guy that's sitting in the seat. So,
Yeah.
um,
So that leads me to my second question. I've been that person who's having to shout at the guy who's sitting in the seat, right? Not shout, but bring something to his attention. I remember one year we were putting up corn silage and we were really trying to let that kernel processing just wasn't where it needed to be. And the operator kept saying like, "Oh, I keep tightening the rolls. The rolls are as tight as they'll go. Like I can't get them any tighter." Um, Talk to me a little bit like if we see a kernel processing, you did a great job of talking about why it's so important, right? To get the full nutritional benefit out of our corn silage. If we're seeing problems with kernel processing during harvest, what are some things we can do to troubleshoot?
well, I guess first to see where your settings are at. Did something go through the KP? Do we have something wrong with the settings? It's first reaction from everybody to tighten it up, to tighten it
Mm,
up. And as they get worn, you're gonna have to tighten it up because as they wear the roll, that your gap gets larger. So I mean, knowing what the status of your KP is going into the season really helps a lot. And like I mentioned, we've really advanced in processing. So there's some things you can do, especially if you're ready to put a new set of roll-ins. I would encourage you guys to go to the next advanced roll count.
mhm,
Because if we can bump up our roll count and make that KP more aggressive, then it really helps with conversations that you have there. Because then you can start at a wider gap, and once we do that, then you're already starting at the top, I guess. So that's probably the biggest thing. And as you're getting complaints as you go through the field, and you know what it can do, we all know what they can do. It's best to just look. Did something happen? Did something come loose? So that's really the key. And the other thing is length of cut makes a pretty big impact on how much that processor works. We really have to think in our large model that KP can use 40% of the engine's horsepower. That's like putting an 8R tractor in there. That thing does a lot of work. So it's a very valuable tool and it can be set right. We just have to check it every once in a while. So
yeah. Teresa, I actually enjoyed your talk, and sorry to sound surprised, but usually when it comes to loan programs or FSA programs, I'm not quite as passionate about bureaucracy as you are.
It's a lot of rules. There are days where we wonder, but
Yes. Well, I'm
they are
glad
there
that
to
people like
help.
you do exist. Yes. Because I think it's really important that we have people there who are passionate about what they do and understand everything that's going on
Mhm.
with some of these programs and opportunities. What's something that you wish more people knew about FSA programs?
A lot of people think that we make up the rules and we don't. We're paid to follow the rules, and they get angry with us, and we're here to help them. So
Mm,
that's kind of what we always just say is we're here to help you. We're here to try to help you, fit your disaster into one of these programs so that we can actually get a payment to you to help with your, whatever it is. And that's something that we kind of work with them. We're tied to the rules, yes, but we're trying to find a way to help them. And that's what we want them to just not get so angry, just, work with us. And that's our main goal is just to work with them.
yeah. Yeah. You talked a lot about the importance of record keeping. And I had to smile when you did, especially when you talked about farmers kind of being notorious for not always keeping the best records. There are people that are great at it and that love it, and a lot of people don't. And I know when I work a lot, like with dairy records, for example, you can tell when people are like excited about record keeping and then it falls off, right?
Yeah.
And so people aren't like you get excited about, oh, I got to keep more records, and you stick to it for a few weeks, and then you give up on it after a bit. And so certainly I really appreciated hearing you talk about how important that was. One of the things I talk about when I talk to producers about record keeping is I say, stick with the system that you can work with, right? It doesn't make sense to kind of, if you're not keeping a lot of records right now, don't think you're going to start writing down every single thing about every calving and every breeding and everything like that and stick to it consistently. So find something that is simple enough that you can stick to. And I know you mentioned it a little bit and talked about this a little bit, but what are some of the minimum records that you wish people kept more often? What are some of the gaps that you see a lot of times when you're working with farmers?
You know, a lot of it, like with the livestock program, if they have deaths, they can provide rendering receipts. Well, guess what? A lot of guys compost. They don't even have rendering trucks. So that's when we say, well, you know what? Then take some pictures. You know, we got to have some sort of proof of all of these losses. And, you know, we just keep a daily log. We need beginning inventory. We need normal mortality losses, and we need your disaster losses. And like I said, the cattle and sheep guys are pretty good about, you know, they've got it by tag, and they keep track of a daily thing, just like the hog guys do. So I think electronics are forcing them to do better records. I know they have for my husband. You know, he's forced to get on a smartphone now instead of his flip phone and keep good records. And that's something that they can use and fall back on then to, you know, come up. We always say they have to have verifiable and reliable documentation. And that's what we're looking for, is something that shows actual proof of what happened. So we just want to see a timeline, and we want to see daily logs, and that'll get them a long ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Jim, I know you didn't get to listen to all of the talks. You were at the state fair, which unfortunately, and I'm going to say this under recording, we found out a few weeks ago that Iowa State Fair is only number 2. The Minnesota State Fair is number 1. So
that's good to know.
So we'll forgive you for being a little bit late, but did you have any questions for any of the speakers that you saw? Or John?
No, I thought they were really good talks, so
yeah.
Nice job.
Yeah. Well, I know I learned a lot. I want to thank the speakers who were here tonight. And thanks everybody who was able to come. This is, again, going to be recorded and available on our I-29 website, where a lot of other previous recordings are as well. And you'll also be receiving an email with a survey. We use those surveys to help improve our programs, to help find new ideas, to find what works and what doesn't. So please feel free to fill that out when you receive it. So with that, thank you again, everyone, for your attendance.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.